Welcome, everyone, to the Sober Spartans on BeastNet podcast this week. Today, we're going to be talking with Tara Pipia, who joined us as a sober person through her background in her research. And, I'll just let her kind of introduce herself and tell everybody who she is.
Thanks, Boggs, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad you reached out. My name is Tara Pipia, like Boggs said, and I'm originally from New York, moved to California in 2018. I started racing Spartan in 2016, just before I moved out here to California. Started with the Masters Elite division, and which quickly went away, and then moved over to age group, and now I'm kind of more into the DECA arena, but we could talk about that later. But regarding the book, during COVID, I'm a personal trainer, so I lost a lot of business. The gyms closed and whatnot. So I said, what am I going to do with my time? An Army veteran, I was in for 10 years, and I had the post 9/11 bill that I hadn't used. So I said, well, I might as well go to school. I never thought I would use it, and I always wanted a PhD. So I enrolled in school, and anyone who's in the military knows that the Army will pay you to go if you have the GI Bill or post 9/11. So that actually helped me survive during COVID. So thank goodness for the military. And I knew immediately when I went in, there's like day 2 in my class, I said, I know what I want to study. So I told my professor, I want to focus on how Spartan racing can help people in recovery. And the reason why is not because I was personally in recovery, although I do not drink, but that's by choice. But a lot of my friends were on the podium consistently. One was struggling with a meth addiction, and he was sober, I think at the time, maybe 6 years. The other one was an alcoholic and was sober for 20. And I just kept hearing all these stories of these amazing people in open ways and also age group and elite who struggled with addiction and now we're sober and just kicking butt on the course, for lack of a better phrase. So there I was. I knew right what I wanted to do, and my professor was on board with it. And ironically, he worked in the recovery field for many years, so he was like the perfect person to guide me. That took a couple years. Graduated. Wrote this very academically boring paper that no one probably will ever want to read. So I told that same professor I would like to make this a book that could help people, but make it readable. So I did just that. And that was quite the challenge, to be honest, because I kept trying to take the research out, but I wanted to leave some of it in. So I decided just to add a lot of pictures, add a little more context about those Spartans I just spoke about. I interviewed them for the dissertation, kept that in the book, and then added some more things about DECA, because at that time I started to get in the DECA arena, which also has a lot of people in recovery. This is what the book looks like. Sober Up Spartan Style, Recovery Through Racing. I got permission of all these gentlemen on the front cover. They pray before the starting line, this particular group. So that's the book. Lots of pictures. It's short, quick read. It's on Amazon. It's also on my website, tarapapia.com. And my goal ultimately is to get this book into rehab centers and correctional facilities so they can learn about these two sports. So when they come out, they have a community to belong to. So I'm trying to bridge that gap, because the first year of recovery is the toughest. 65 to 85% of people relapse, according to the research I've dug up here. In that first year, I'm trying to, hopefully save some people, bring them to this positive community where they belong. Because you walk into 24-hour fitness, maybe they say hi when you walk in the door, but then you're left to your own vices, right? And our community is completely different. You make a friend, you just turn around, you have a friend next to you on any side. So
You're right on task with that. Again, this is the Sober Spartans podcast. We actually have a group on Facebook. We're actually going to be flying to Kilimanjaro and taking an adaptive athlete up in September. We have open spots in that if there's anybody who wants to learn more about that trip. But you're right, that first year is everything when it comes to getting sober. Myself, that was probably the first 6 months was the toughest time in my life. And at the time, my employer thought it'd be great to have me host a giant drinking festival out in the woods for our customers. And I had to go buy everything and provide everything. And here I am struggling to be sober and having to host it. So there's definitely some tests out there that happen. And as far as sober Spartans out on the course, gosh, I think every race I've been at, there's you run into that person. You can see them, you're talking to them, and throughout the whole course, now they're your best friend, and that's just what the community really is out there. You talked a little bit about getting into Spartan back in 2016 and running the age group and masters, and now into DECA. How's that transition worked for you, going from the muddy courses to the arena?
That's a great question. So at the time, DECA was like sort of new. I think it was right before COVID they kicked off. And I'm like, what a waste of time. I drive an hour to this event that lasts 18 minutes and I go home. So for a while there, I was a little bit resistant because, as Spartans, we're used to, especially for a beast or an ultra, you're out there for a while. And then not to mention you get there an hour or more early and then you hang out if you hang out for the podium or just to be with friends, right? So it's a whole day thing. So I resisted it for a while. But what happened was 2022, I went hardcore. I did a few decas here and there, but mainly Spartans. I went to the Spartan Trifecta World Championship in Greece, wound up getting third. This was in 2022. And then I got third only in the Deca mile for Deca Worlds. And then I got a heel spur. So 2023, like I was just burned mentally, physically. I started racing, and I don't know if you've experienced this. I started racing Spartan out of a compulsion. Like I have an addictive personality. I don't think you need to necessarily go down the path of drugs and alcohol to be an addicted type person. Anything I do is I do it too much. And that's what happened with Spartan. So I got very burned out emotionally, physically. I didn't want to go anywhere. I was signed up for all kinds of things and I didn't show up. And people were kind of worried about me. And I think I just forgot my why. I forgot why I was doing it. And it became just a compulsive act. So then finally, the heel spur, I couldn't run. So I said, well, there's a few DECA things. And then all of a sudden, DECA became the only thing I could really do. And I just fell in love with it because it is the same as Spartan in terms of the community. It's just a smaller pocket of time that you're torturing yourself, I guess.
That's very true. And being in California, you have a lot of partner gyms that partner up with Spartan DECA and present a lot of those events. So you have a lot more access to it. I think up here in the Pacific Northwest, we barely get Spartan. We don't get Tough Mudder this year. It's just kind of all fading away up here. So last year, I actually had to drive to Northern California to do a couple races with Mariana, our adaptive athlete in California that's got cerebral palsy and is deaf. But yeah, we don't have anything up here anymore. So all I have is local races, and this year Spartan is coming up here twice. No matter how addicted I get, I have to go all over the place to do them. And you talked about how it's not just drugs and alcohol. I mean, you have an addictive personality. There's people out there that's why they eat all day. There's people like that they develop OCD because they're addicted to things being exactly how they're supposed to be. So it is a lot more than just drugs and alcohol out there that people can be addicted to. And I've seen it like what happened with you, and I've seen with other racers that they go out 13, 14, 15 trifectas, and the next year they're like, I don't even want to think about a Spartan. I've done way too many of them. I signed up for dozens I didn't show up to, and they're right there, same story as you. What kind of keeps you going these days, now that you're kind of not able to run as much and you're doing all the decas? What motivates you to keep doing that?
Thankfully, the heel spur is gone for the most part. So I got shockwave therapy, which was kind of expensive, but it was worth it at work. So I can do Spartan, but because I fell in love with DECA, I'm kind of hanging in that arena for now. So what motivates me, there's multiple things, but the first thing that comes to mind is other people. Mariana, I know her very well. She's one of them. So I watch her out there. She's passionate. You can see, I don't know if you've ever seen it, and she's one of the people I see it, and you look in their eyes and they just want it. They want to just get the fastest time. Doesn't matter what they're feeling or suffering. She's one of those people, she blocks it out and I see the fire in her. That's what motivates me. It's the fire in other people that reminds me of the fire within me. And I think that's what keeps us going. Could keep you sober, could keep you being a good parent, a good spouse, a good friend, just the fire for life. And which brings me to another thing that motivates me is my father who passed in 2018. a lot of his life he watched TV. I would say he was depressed. No one really said it back then, but he was very much introverted, a wonderful, very spiritual, loving man. I could talk to him and analyze the whole entire universe with him. But I think he was sad. He was missing other people, missing friendships and closeness. And then when he passed away, I'll never forget, he said, "Tara, I ran out of time." And I remember thinking, wow, like he had 2 weeks to live. That's just like that. So that meant so many things to him. But what it meant to me was that I have to live my life. Like, what do I love? And I love moving my body. I love doing it with other people in an arena. Like Deco Worlds this year was absolutely amazing. My mother came with me. We talked about my dad a lot, but like it's just making use of your time. We don't know when our time's up. So it doesn't have to be Spartan or Deca, but I think what motivates you should be what you're interested in, right? It should be your passion, which fitness happens to be mine. So yeah, just I don't want to run out of time. So that's another thing.
Yeah, that is important. You know, your dad's generation was probably, baby boomer era. That was the you got to be a man, be tough, chin up. It's you're gonna be the man, and that is a very tough thing for a lot of people, and even traditionally now, men still have that stigma, and they don't want to talk about their feelings. And I don't know if you see Joey and myself and all the other people that are always posting, 988 and talking about, suicide awareness and mental health awareness, because it's you just have to be tough. You're not allowed to have feelings, and not just be a man. And we're trying to get past that and get people to talk about it and not do the wrong things, and either drugs, alcohol, or suicide. We want people to be here. That's probably what your dad probably struggled with a little bit when he realized it was
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know if you saw, but I flew Mariana out to Florida to finish out her first trifecta in December.
I know she was doing the trifecta and she was trying to work it to stay for Worlds, but I didn't know that you were the one out there with her. That's amazing.
Yep. So I drove to Northern California to do the super with her and to introduce her to the team and kind of get her into that. And then, Joey and Zach and I brought her out to Florida, and then she did the beast with Henry and Amanda. Amanda is one of the founders of the Sober Spartans. And then she did the sprint. We walked it. She actually walked the entire thing with me, and then we went and did the Spartan extra mile too. Not only did she finish her trifecta, but she also got the extra mile.
Yeah, of course.
And,
She's amazing.
and then our friend Tom Loomis and the Loomis family donated a one of the unique medal holders, the Spartan helmet, for her to put her wedges into.
Oh wow. I bet she loved that. She has it already or you're
Yeah.
presenting it to her?
No, I presented it to her in Florida at the
Okay.
event, and the pictures that I got of her up on the podium was posing with it.
Oh, that's great.
So that was an amazing time, and that's what motivates me.
Okay.
If you ever, like I said, a lot of people know my story, but what motivates me is helping others. I'm never going to be a podium guy. Running is not my thing, but you put heavy stuff on my back, I'll carry it for miles. I've did a ultra with an adaptive athlete, and a lot of that was carrying all their gear and helping them through stuff, and 31 plus miles of hell
Wow.
and finishing. That was the thing, as we finished. It wasn't pretty. It was 14, 15 hours, whatever the max time was. We were the last ones to finish, but we finished. And so that's what motivates me. And the part about being sober, once I started to stop drinking and focus on myself, I found that Spartan was that outlet. So in your book, you said you spoke specifically with three different athletes that you kind of profiled. Can you give me a little history and a little kind of synopsis of what you have there without giving away too much of the details of the book? Because we're gonna post some links to the book and talk about it and share it in the Sober Spartans community so that other people can read it too.
Great. I appreciate that. More awareness, the better. There's actually eight men that I interviewed, and you mentioned three. I do highlight three more specifically in the beginning. And the
Okay.
reason I did that is I know them personally, and then the others I I weave in as we go through the story. But without giving away too much, like you said, these 8 men, the 3 that I mentioned that I know, I met personally through Spartan racing. And then they led me to someone else, to another, to another, to another. And that's how I got the 8. It was like a quick chain reaction because, again, like you said, we're all friends. So it happened very quickly. I had the 8. And you talked about men not being able to express themselves. I got a lot of criticism about writing only about men, but there was a reason why I did that. Number one, I was approached by men who were telling me their stories, and there was a lot of women who came forth later, but I don't recall any woman sharing like their recovery story. And as we know, there's a lot out there. So it was almost the opposite. The men were opening up to me. And because I was so close with my father, I think I was one of the few people my father could really talk to. And maybe he needed more. He needed maybe a male group of friends to talk to. But either way, I've always been super sensitive to the fact that men are not allowed to express themselves. Like, absolutely ridiculous. So it was important to me to focus on men, and I'll have another book on women down the road. And I mentioned that in here. I will get to that. But I felt like this was super important to get out there. So, and they were very open about their stories. It's very raw, some of the information, like eating out of garbage cans, and meth, and stealing credit cards, and being arrested. Prison is a big theme too, right? And a lot of them got sober in prison because they realized if they didn't, they'd be right back there again.
Yeah.
So without, again, I'm trying, like, how do I say this without like saying too much? But I'm just grateful to all of them for being so open and so honest, because as you said earlier, where men are ingrained, like from early on, like, don't say too much, don't hold it in. That's heart disease, all that stuff comes into play, suicide. So they were just completely open. I'm so grateful for them, because their story is going to help that person that's afraid to tell their story. And the more we talk about it and keep it out in the open, that 1 year window we're talking about will be a healthier window with more people who stay sober and stay alive. And that is my ultimate goal, to bridge that gap. That 1 year time frame took 2 years on average for these men to find Spartan race. 2 years is too long. If that 1 year window is the crucial marker of 65 to 85% of people relapsing, overdosing, dying, 2 years is too long. It's 1 year too long. So if we can get this word into the rehab centers, as of now, I only know one rehab, which is Jericho Project in Brisbane, that actually has an affiliation with DECA and has their men go to Spartan races. And they also do CrossFit. Again, it's not always just Spartan and DECA, it could be anything. But yeah, the story also goes into other addictions, like, can Spartan become an addiction? And then you mentioned that you had to bring the alcohol to that festival, the party, and you were in charge, you were sober, and that's very stressful. I wondered how the festival area at Spartan would affect each of the
Yeah.
men that I interviewed. And by and large, most of them said it's your personal responsibility to keep your recovery strong, and to have a partner, a friend, someone accountable to, which was a major finding in the book. Was the 3 things that Spartan brings to help people remain sober is community, challenge, and accomplishment. If we're not challenged, we're bored. And what do we do when we're bored? We eat, we drink, we do stupid things, right? And then the accomplishment feels good. Who doesn't want to feel good? Helping people, like you were talking about with Mariana, as part of the community. We need each other. We can't fight drugs and alcohol alone. We can't fight anything alone. We're meant to be here as a community. We're social beings. So, but yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or went off topic a little bit.
No, that was great. Talking about the way that the community is everything, and somebody to help you be accountable. Again, back to that festival where I was having to host and supply alcohol. I had one of my buddies that worked with me, and I told him, if I start getting antsy or something, you need to pull me and go for a walk. And that's kind of how we went through my first year. The buddy that was helping me, he wasn't actually a sober guy. He stopped drinking to support me.
Mm.
And it was about 3 or 4 years that he didn't drink just to support me. And nowadays he's back to doing his own thing. He hosts some New Year's parties and drinks at them, and that's his dig. It doesn't bother me. These days, I always have to look it up, but I think I'm coming up on 7.5 years now. So it's been a while for me. After I got past, really after about 4 years, I stopped counting. I was just like, you know what? I'm good. I don't have the desire to drink. You know, people can drink around me. I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. And that's kind of where I got to. And I don't personally see myself drinking again, but I'm an addict to keeping myself busy. You know, that's a different addiction that I have. I have a full-time job. I have three businesses. I'm a full-time college student. We adopted our granddaughter. You know, I from morning till night, my day is planned out, and that's probably some of my offset from being an addict.
It's interesting you mentioned that about staying busy because Dave Lawrence, who is one of the men that I interviewed, and of course they all have I have permission to use their names in the dissertation. They have to be anonymous, but they all signed contracts to say it was okay. So Dave mentioned just that: busy, 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 busy. He became sober. He's also has a strong work ethic. He owns two homes now. Spartan, and even had an obstacle course in his backyard when he lived here in Santa Cruz. Always moving and building, works on cars, has a great, successful business, wonderful family. But that was one of the main things that he said, especially in the beginning. He said he worked himself to the bone, anything but to do drugs. And he there's a quote in there from him. I don't remember exactly how it was, but the paraphrase, something along the lines of taking this massive amount of energy spent hunting for drugs and flipping it around and turning it into life, something positive. And if it's work, if it's taking care of your grandkid, whatever it is, it's much better than the alternative because I'm not so sure that we can change. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but how do you change an addictive personality? Somebody with that kind of sounds like you have a lot of energy to direct. I can't change myself. So I don't know if there's some cure for people who are like that, but I want to look at it as a gift. We have a lot of energy. Where are you going to put it? And you're putting it into your life.
Yeah, that's when you come across people with the addictive personality, they have to have something. Because if they have nothing, they're going to go to, that boredom, that drugs and alcohol, that eating, gluttony, even Terry Crews, world class athlete and model, he's a sex addict, a recovering sex addict, and then that's just his personality, and that's unfortunately once you have that personality, you realize that you have to have something to focus on. Otherwise, I think that you have to fill that time, and that's where you get stuck in your addiction.
Right. And you have to know yourself. So I've been in my early 20s before I found running. Again, I probably was depressed on a level, which nobody talked about that, right? And I was just doing eating and doing things that like had no purpose almost because I was bored. And running took all that energy that I had and put it into something positive. And I'll never forget, I was training for my first marathon. I think I was 29. And at that time, I didn't drink a lot, but like, it was in the 20s where you do happy hour, right? So it was very common. And I was a substitute teacher at the time. So you go to happy hour. Um, but I'd go to happy hour and have maybe four Coors Lights or five, which is a lot for me. And I went on a training run a morning after like however many beers I had, which um, was normal for me at the time until I tried to run 10 miles to prepare for this full marathon. I went behind a bush, like I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt awful. So everyone in my group thought that I was just like new to marathon running and I couldn't run 10 miles. But the truth was, I drank too much and stayed out way too late the night before.
Yeah.
So that day I made a promise to myself that I was not going to do that again. Not, I didn't give up drinking, but I certainly gave up that thing that you're supposed to do in your 20s, which is go to happy hour.
Yeah.
And I stopped. And then I ultimately stopped, back to your point of your friend quitting for you. Um, so from 29 to 40, whatever years old, I would just have a beer, maybe at a wedding, or if I went to lunch with someone and they had one, maybe I'd have one, but I didn't really care much about drinking. But I was at a Spartan race, the Montana trifecta. I think it was a trifecta. And somebody was pressuring me to drink, and I didn't want to. And one of the guys, Eddie Sanchez, who's in the book, was next to me. And this person, this Spartan, kept pushing this shot on me. And I'm like, man, I don't even like shots. Well, I drank it. And I looked at his face and he looked so disappointed. I like wanted to cry. I'm like, what did I just do? I'm in my late 40s and I gave in to peer pressure. It was just ridiculous. So that moment, I turned to him and I said, I'm never going to drink again. And he's like, no, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to. I said, no, I'm done. So that was May of 2021. I haven't, for weddings, I don't care what kind of celebration it is, I haven't had a drink. And he thought that that was hard for me. And I said, no, it's hard for you because I could care less about drinking. I don't really crave it. You're the hero. You're the one that craves this thing so much and decided to stop. That's harder. So all the credit goes to him. I just did it because just to honor the men in the book, and I don't need it anyway. So, right, my life's much richer in a lot of other ways. So,
Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to do that. It's something I wish I could have done. It takes focus for me to not do it, but after years of not doing it, it became something I didn't have to focus on anymore. What would you say to people who are new to sobriety or new to Spartan, or if you just run into them on course, what would you kind of say to them to kind of help them along?
well, my phrase is always like, "You got this." I don't know where that came. Maybe the army. You just say that. You just look at someone's face and you can almost see the pain, or maybe they want to give up, or maybe you see that fire that Mariana has. Whatever you see, I think you have to meet the person where they are. This is I'm talking as like a coach. If I'm coaching someone, so I always obviously positive encouragement, but also like know your why. I think I mentioned that earlier on. Like, why did you sign up? So that ultra that you did, 31 plus miles, that's hard to do. That's a long way where you're like, why am I doing this? I'm sure even in the sprint, I've asked myself, why did I sign up for this? This is crazy. Why do I put myself through this? But there is a why. There is a reason. Either you're directing your energy in a positive way, your friends got you into it, you like moving your body, you love nature, whatever it might be. So I think I would tell those people who need encouragement to remember their why and to also do it for the people who can't. Like, you're helping adaptive athletes. My brother unfortunately got in a motorcycle accident. He had a heart attack while he was on a motorcycle. He lived, but he's, got a slight neurological thing. He limps a little bit and he hurt his hand. And he probably can't do a Spartan now. So every time I race, I think of him and I grab a shirt for him because I have too many anyway. So I'm like, give me a male, medium, or large or whatever. But he's, thankfully okay. But there's people who absolutely can't even get out of bed, like, or people who are mentally defeated or depressed. There's so many people out there who cannot. If you have the God-given ability or the universal ability to do it. Use your body while you can, because you don't know when you're going to run out of time. You don't know who you're going to inspire. Like, Mariana inspires a lot of people, and you just inspired me by you helping her. Like, that's a lot to go through an ultra and a trifecta. So that's what I would say to encourage people. Oh, you said sobriety though. Like, I
Yeah,
guess I didn't focus on that part.
that's all right.
Sorry. Well, it's in the book. Read the book. It's all in there.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I'll be getting a copy here in the mail from our friends at Amazon shortly.
Okay.
And you posted something online. You're doing a book signing soon, or has that already happened?
No, that's correct. It's I believe on the 11th. I'm doing three, so they're all in January in the Bay Area.
All right,
So one's in Redwood City, the other one's in Lafayette, and the other one's in Fremont.
all right. And they can find that information at your website, terrapapia.com.
Uh, well, now they can if I put it on there. Sure. I just have a landing page. I'm not a huge techie, so I'm like, oh my God, that was hard enough. So I can add that on there, definitely on my Facebook. And if anyone wants a signed book anyway, they can reach out to me. I have copies that are ordered here, and then I can mail it to them. Or if they live close by, I can bring it to them too.
Okay, because I know we do have some sober Spartans down in the Bay Area. I think there's some a little further south too. So I'm hoping that some of them might come out and meet you and talk to you and share their stories. Some of them have been on the show previously.
I'd love that.
We talked a lot about the first year of sobriety. Um, what kind of advice would you give to people who might be listening to this that aren't sober yet, or that need to be sober and are looking at that impassable wall of the first year?
Mm,
You talked about finding an outlet or taking a partner? Is there anything else that you kind of from your research put out there that they can use in that first year?
Oh, absolutely. Or now you're saying someone who is like initially becoming sober or just like kind of thinking about it, like in the initial stages?
Yeah, so I mean, different people find that they have to be sober in different ways. Sometimes it's a family intervention, sometimes it's a trip to jail, sometimes it's an auto accident. You know, there's something that usually is a trigger point,
Right.
and they're waking up, whether it's in jail or in a hospital or waking up in the morning and their family left them. You know, what would you kind of toss out there to them in that first year that they, from day one, they should probably, think of and maybe focus on? Some
Mhm.
people it's going to the meetings and for focusing on steps. Other people it's finding your why.
Yeah.
So kind of, is there any advice that you'd give on that first year?
Yeah, absolutely. And you just said the first one, your why.
Yeah.
Just like the Spartan course, why? When you're struggling and you wondering why the heck you signed up and actually paid for this thing, there was a reason. So why? Was it jail and not wanting to go back to jail again? And I have friends who say, "Oh, you shouldn't." I heard it a lot. You should not become sober for someone else. But a lot of times it is for someone else. It's you, your connection with that someone else. So it's not actually just them. It's how you feel about them and how they make you feel and what you used to have, maybe. So maybe it's for a spouse, or maybe it's just for you not going to jail again. But everyone has a different why. And if they became sober, even just for 3 days, why? Did you feel like crap? Like, did you not like what it did to your body? Don't do that to your body anymore. That was your why. You don't want to feel that way. So easier said than done. But if you know your why, that's a start. Have a friend remind you of your why, like your friend, sober or not, like just someone who loves you and cares about you. Because like I said, community was the main theme. Even though it was, accomplishment and challenge, community is the longest chapter when I talk about those three things. It's
Yep.
people, it's other people. Again, we're social beings. And there's a study which is also in the book that they did with rats, and they had solo rats. It's a series of studies from the 1970s. Solo rats in a cage that was kind of boring, with like no landscape, just bars, right? And a bottle of water, regular water, and then one laced with drugs. It
Yep.
had like a sweet, I think it was morphine with like a sweet taste. Then the other rats, they called it Rat Park, had all kinds of apparatus. There were male and female rats. They had like landscapes of nature in this huge cage. Like that's why they called it Rat Park. So then they wanted to know how many people in the solo cage alone would go towards the morphine and how many people in the Rat Park cage would do that. Now, they all tried it at some point, but not one rat in the Rat Park cage overdosed and died. Every single one alone did. They died of an overdose. They had nothing to do and they had no one to connect with and bond with. There's criticism of every single study you will ever read, right? There's even my book, right? It's going to happen. So, but this study showed a huge thing about what drugs do to us beyond just the chemical part. It's the lack of connection. So in that first year, connection is super important, as scary as it is, especially for men. Like you said, you're taught not to. So now how do you connect and open up? Oh, let me just drink again. No one's gonna, I'm not supposed to talk about this stuff. Be open. And Spartan and DECA is not the only avenue, but they are two avenues that provide that community and that support and that, like, you got this thing that I was talking about, that I tell people, like, I love everyone that's out there. I've never had so many friends in my life. I had a lot of kids in my neighborhood. We all were tight together, but now I have a whole Spartan community and a DECA community of friends all over the world. Like, look, we're friends already, and we don't even live in the same state, and we never met in person. I consider you a friend. So definitely connection.
That's exactly how I got into More Heart Than Scars. Was I talked to one of the guys that I was friends with on Facebook, and flew out to Atlanta and went to a race and stayed with them. And all of a sudden, we're all best friends and family. Really, it's not even friends; we're family at that point. And that's what's really done it for me. And I hope that anybody listening to this show, that you can find your why and find your community. And for any of you out there, reach out to me. I'm sure Tara, you'd probably take some calls if anyone needed to talk about getting sober and kind of give your insights. It's tough, but man, it is worth it. I'm seeing so many more people, more and more people choosing to be sober, not because they have to, because they want to. And I think that's an amazing thing too. Is just more and more people choosing to get away from drugs and alcohol. And even I've been curious. I'm probably never going to try it, but Danny Trejo, you know who he is?
No, I don't.
He's an actor, always plays the bad guy, Machete and stuff like that. Hispanic looking, real disheveled face, just real hard looking guy. Just
Hmm.
came up on 50 years sober, but he also makes his own um, alcohol free tequila and bourbon that he markets through Trejo's Tacos. And I've been curious, but it's like, yeah, it's like the athletic beer. I see all that out there. I'm like, it's a great idea for some people. I don't even want to tempt it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think it's just amazing seeing all these different like substitutes and things where people are like, well, you can have all the flavor of alcohol without actually having the alcohol. So for people who just like the flavor, I guess that's good for them. That leads down the wrong path for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's another thing for sobriety in that first year. You have to know yourself. You. I don't know you, right? Like I could be like, oh, try. It's alcohol free. You got to stay strong to what you know that would lead you down a bad path, and you're probably right. Like that's and honor other people for what their sobriety looks like. And someone maybe can have the athletic brewing every night, and it doesn't affect them.
Yep.
So one of the guys in the book too said his friend, quit drinking and hard drugs, and he's able to smoke marijuana, go to work, keep his family. And he said, I can't do that. If I
Yep.
have one joint, I'm done. So knowing yourself super important. So good for you for being interested, but saying no, thank you.
And it's tough. I mean, a lot of people out there that taste is everything. Like I used to drink scotch and whiskey like it was water, really. I'd go through a half gallon a weekend. And that flavor is still out there. And I think that would be something that might trigger me back into it. And it's like, nah, I just
Good for
don't
you.
even want to try it.
Kudos to you.
So we've been talking for a little while.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed this, and I might just invite you back as a regular guest on the regular show to talk deck on Spartan in general. Um, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners in closing, and maybe talk about your book a little bit more before we finish up today?
Sure. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And again, thank you for having me. I'm so glad you reached out. And the irony that it's New Year's Eve, I realized that as you were talking about the drugs and alcohol, and here we are saying choosing to be sober and being sober to save your life, like on New Year's Eve. There's nothing better than actually enjoying the transition into the new year, clear headed and all that. So, so thank you is number one. And number two, I hope everyone has a great 2025. I'm a big fan of a couple of, I don't know if you call them New Year's resolutions, but intentions. So I don't know if everyone out there has an intention, but I can't hurt to have one or two, right? To set you on the path. Kind of like when you sign up for an event, a Spartan or a DECA, I have something in my mind. Like maybe I want to get on the podium, or for a DECA, I'd like to shave like even 2 seconds off your time is amazing for DECA. So 2025, I have a few things that I'm looking forward to. And you met about the book. That's definitely one of my intentions is to get this book into as many rehabs and correctional facilities as I can. That is my universal purpose. So to bridge that gap we're talking about from that 1 year when they walk out, they'll be like, oh, I heard a Spartan. Wow, that's, community I can belong to, instead of sending them to a chain gym where, fitness helps, but again, it's back to the community. And I know for sure Spartan and DECA has saved a lot of lives. Not to say CrossFit and other brands can't, I don't care what it is, just use something, some community with fitness to help. So if anyone knows any way, connection to get this into more places, please reach out to me. I'm working with a few people right now. Jonathan Hastings is one of them, where we're trying to make that happen with the correctional facilities and rehab centers. So,
Well, I really appreciate you being on. And I reached out to you because my intention was to start the year with an episode focusing on sobriety for all those people who today is their last day drinking, and come Monday morning, maybe they'll
Mm.
pick this up and listen to this and be like, huh, I'm 3 days sober. Maybe I'll go ahead and keep this going. So that's what my intention was of having this today, was to hopefully have some people use this as their starting point. So thank you, Tara, for coming on today.
And thank you for your good work.
Yep.
Appreciate you.